A few weeks ago, I made a video talking about 5 of the best matches from the Overwatch League in 2019, and some people mistakenly thought those were the only 5 games I thought were good. But today, I'm here to make it clear that this is not the case at all, and after many of you showed me you were interested in seeing a part 2 for this, I knew I needed to make this video happen. The same things from the previous one apply here as well though. Keep in mind that I'm not saying these are without a doubt the 5 best matches, it's simply just my opinion on 5 of the ones I really liked. It's also worth noting that this list does not go in any specific order, and to remember that every game on here was selected either because it was surprising, super back and forth, historic, really entertaining in general, or a combination of these things. But that's everything you need to know heading into the video, so with that said, today I present 5 more of the best matches from Overwatch League Season 2. Kicking off this list is the Shanghai Dragons getting their first win in franchise history during Stage 1 over the Boston Uprising. Before the 2019 season got underway, the Dragons were being rated as a top 10 team in the league by some. This seemed like their year to finally turn it around after that atrocious 0-40 inaugural season. But things wouldn't start off the way they'd hope it would after 2 bad losses in a row to start off their year. The pain for Shanghai fans around the world would not be eased. Some were even beginning to ask if they would ever win a game. But then, on a fateful Friday night matchup during Week 2, their prayers were finally answered. Coming into this matchup, Shanghai's opponent, that being the Boston Uprising, headed into this game showing some real promise. They played the NYXL extremely close to start, and their rookie main tank Fusion seemed to be picking up exactly where he left off in the World Cup. Then they kept that momentum going with a win over the Houston Outlaws, which made them appear as a formidable opponent. And to make it all the more impressive, they had their main tank player Axiom on the Zarya role since Color Hex was serving a suspension at the time. Needless to say, the Dragons had a big challenge ahead of them. It doesn't help that this team was still trying to get used to Gamzo as their main tank player while trying to find their comfort zone in the new meta. But little did we know until shortly before this match would begin that the Boston Uprising would not have their leader and starting main tank Fusions available to play. With this being Color Hex's first game, plus not having Fusions there, this seemed like as good as a chance as ever for the Dragons to finally get that ever so elusive first win. And as we all know, they would not let this opportunity go to waste. They had the advantage, and they were hungry to win. And what better way to get your first win than by winning 3 straight maps to secure the series quickly? They started off on the right foot with a quick 2-0 on Ilios to give the fans some hope. But then, of course, in typical Shanghai fashion, they had to make the next few maps really stressful. But nonetheless, they persevered with a 4-3 win on Kings Row and a series-clinching victory on Horizon Lunar Colony that went multiple rounds. And after a meaningless final map concluded, Shanghai fans all over the world were able to breathe one massive sigh of relief. The emotions and hype were out of control. You could see the fans at the Blizzard Arena shedding tears of joy, even if Shanghai wasn't necessarily their team. Other than Boston being the team to give a winless franchise their first ever W, I would say that just about every other person in the world was happy for Shanghai. This was a truly special moment, and it marked the beginning of a remarkable turnaround for this franchise. This wasn't the most entertaining game in the world, but it certainly was meaningful. It was historic. It still did have its moments though. Kings Row and Horizon Lunar Colony were intense. They were as close as you can possibly get. And if we're talking about players in particular, then how about Ding? He'd have one of his many heroic performances on this night. The Sombra in particular just put in so much work. Look at the stats. 152 enemies hacked while nearly averaging 4 enemies EMP'd is quite the stat line. He was all over the place, but credit does have to go out to everybody else on that Shanghai starting lineup for doing their part too. This game was a wonderful experience with big history behind it, which is exactly why it ended up making this list. Coming in at the number 2 spot is the 5-map thriller between the Los Angeles Valiant and Seoul Dynasty in Stage 4. This game was truly spectacular and kind of underrated to be honest, and as it turns out, it ended up being a very important game that both teams really needed to win. The Valiant were looking to stay in the hunt for a play-in tournament spot, while the Dynasty were attempting to keep pace for a top 6 spot and a guaranteed playoff appearance. This was a battle of who wanted to win more, and right from the start, nobody could impose their wills early and take over the game. Things were looking good for Seoul at the start after winning a hard-fought game on Busan. The Valiant seemed a little off, and Seoul was making the most of it. Oh, as a quick side note though, how about that 6k Death Blossom from Shaxx? It was one of just many absolutely wild plays that came as a result of the series. But anyway, like I was saying, it looks like the Seoul Dynasty are in control, right? But then the Valiant swing back by taking Hanamura thanks to a really strong second point defense. Things did look rather dire a few times too, but the Valiant stood tall thanks to some clutch plays from KSF and agilities, and at first, it seemed like they were just going to take this game by a mile now that they had the momentum on their side because they absolutely destroyed Seoul on King's Row. But of course, as I've been alluding to, this was a real power struggle till the end, so of course that wouldn't happen. Route 66 went down to the wire, but Seoul managed to pull it off after both teams completed the map. Big credit goes to Fleta and Custa here. Fleta got subbed in for this map and he did his job. He made so many big plays on that Hanzo. After all, Fleta is the meta, so that does kind of make sense. But meanwhile, Custa helped keep his team in the game thanks to some solid Baptiste play. Then of course came that map 5 on Ilios. This was it. The series was tied up at 2. The winner of this map would take this series and would be one step closer to accomplishing their dreams. If I were to describe this map in one word, it would be chaotic. Every single round of Ilios was 100% to 99. It literally can't get any closer than that. Seoul barely squeaks out the win on Ruins. Then the Valiant come right back and do just enough to win Lighthouse. And what's insane is that the Valiant would try such a risky strategy on the final round that would decide this match. They pulled the Defran strat out by playing Torb on Ilios well, and it almost got them the win. Keyword is almost though. The thing that makes this map even more absurd though is that they kept rolling with the Torb even after losing the point at first. And while KSF had his moments on Torb along with Shax on the McCree, the lack of a Mei put them at a disadvantage and Seoul was able to exploit that. Although my team was on the losing end of this epic battle, I can't help but look back fondly on how great it was. There were so many great moments and it was super close. This especially goes for Route 66 and Ilios. This was yet another classic added to the rivalry between these two franchises, and it's one you can't possibly forget about. Landing at the number 3 spot is the Houston Outlaws pulling off the upset over the San Francisco Shock in Stage 3. Now this is one that a lot of fans seem to recall when thinking of the best matches from what I've seen, and I'm right there with those people to be honest. Houston versus San Francisco was a classic. I'm a sucker for an upset, and this one certainly falls under that description. The Outlaws were coming off a winless stage and had now lost their last 8 games after a tough match in Week 1 against the NYXL, and the Shock were just at a different level, right? Yeah, they almost lost to Atlanta in Week 1, but they were no doubt the best team in the world at this time. But did being a massive underdog make the Outlaws scared? No. No, it did not. They may have taken that L to New York to start off the stage, but something felt different about these guys. They looked more confident, and they finally realized that traditional GOATs was not meant for them. Instead, they found that using the Sombra variant of this composition plus their own unique style was something they were far more comfortable on. Putting Dante on Sombra, Raucus on Ana, and both Jake and Lynx around some DPS was the recipe for success. After playing so well against the NYXL, the Outlaws approached their match against the Shock with the "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" mentality. The plays set up by Dante Sombra were perfect, and the Shock couldn't seem to respond as Nepal went their way due to some fantastic teamwork from Dante, Muma, and Raucus. But then, this is where the match started to take a really nasty turn if you were an Outlaws fan. The emotions felt took a quick 180 after the Outlaws struggled to get anything going on Horizon Lunar Colony. And after Houston got spanked on Eichenwald, things were starting to look grim. For some reason, they decided to play the GOATS mirror match on this map, and they paid dearly for even trying something so pointless. This was it though. They were down 2 maps to 1. All momentum they had was gone. If the Outlaws lost here, then the losing streak would increase to 9. Is this how it was going to end? Were the Outlaws destined to forever be losers in Season 2? There was only one thing left to do. Put Dante back in and just hope for the best. All the pressure in the world was on the Outlaws to stop the bleeding here. They needed to start winning right here, right now. And that's exactly what they did. The Desperation Sombra switch gave them the boost they needed to take back over. The Outlaws turned up the intensity and pulled off the upset by full holding the Shock on Havana, then taking Ilios thanks to the heroics of Jake Sfera and Dante Sombra. As the result of this game was set into reality, you could feel the raw energy and emotions of the Outlaws players up on stage. This is what they desperately needed. What better way to snap a losing streak than by taking down the #1 team in the league? The Outlaws successfully pulled off one of the biggest upsets in recent memory thanks to the heroics of Dante. Some people don't truly realize how much of an impact he had towards the team's success in this game. He was the hard carry. He set up all of the plays. He took advantage of the Shock's weakness to this hero and exploited it to the maximum. I'm sure this win felt extra good for him in particular since he got that revenge on his former team for trading him away. But let's not forget about Raucus either. What a feel-good story for him, right? Before Stage 3, he got nothing but hate and criticism. Some were even calling him the worst flex support player in the league. But for this game, he silenced all who doubted him. While this isn't my personal favorite game to watch, it had a lot of great things going on in it. There was a big upset, a great storyline, and high levels of emotion. But that's enough about this game, right? Let's move on to the next one. Next up is the Shanghai Dragons versus the London Spitfire during the play-in tournament. I got a bunch of comments in the previous video where you guys seemed to be pretty surprised I didn't include this match, and that's understandable. This is one of the best games we got all year. To start, this will famously, or I guess infamously for some, go down as one of the longest games in Overwatch League history. This bad boy needed a total of 8 maps to decide a winner, and whether you hated how long it lasted or you love it, we can all kind of agree this was a win-win situation. If you loved every second of it, then you were in heaven, but if you didn't, you still did get tokens for watching anyway. But from a gameplay perspective, this match was pretty exciting. Getting more Shanghai time is always a blessing. Watching Youngjin's Doomfist and Diem's McCree and Widowmaker was like Christmas coming early. Also, you finally got to see what London is capable of in the new meta. There was a lot of rumors going around saying they were rolling in scrims, and with the way the series began, it did kind of look like those rumors were holding up to be true. Gesture was pretty clean on the Sigma. Birdring seemed to be regaining his old form with some of the big plays he was making on Doomfist and McCree, but Doshin was going really hard with the Ana. And Prophet, well, he was doing Prophet things. Prophet in particular is somebody I really wanted to praise here. He took over this game right from the start. And what's scary is that he was straight up outperforming Ding on Pharah. Prophet has never really been known for his Pharah up until this point, and Ding was arguably the #1 Pharah in the league at this point in time, so that was a scary thought. You could feel the impact on Numbani and Hanamura in particular. And yeah, London did lose Hanamura, but Prophet was still carrying regardless. I mentioned his Pharah, but how about his Tracer? How many times did he clutch it out on that point B defense by finding picks with his Tracer? It was like we were still living in the past. It's almost as if it was still 2018. Prophet was a total monster. And after London took Gibraltar, we had a scenario where Shanghai had to make a serious comeback if they wanted to make the playoffs. They almost pulled it off too. They took Lijiang, they kept themselves alive with a draw in King's Row, and they took care of business on Dorado to give us a series tied up at 3 heading into the 8th and final map. And what a map it was. Ilios was crazy. Both Well and Ruins went the distance with a score of 100% to 99 with them both splitting who won each round. At this point, both teams were tired and weary. This had gone on for long enough, and once London took the point, they never looked back on Lighthouse. Their will to win was stronger, and Shanghai was out of gas. London wins the series and sends the Dragons home packing. I loved this game. It's an Overwatch League lover's dream come true. It was evenly matched, entertaining, and very long. Not to mention that there was a lot riding on the outcome of this match. The winner would make the overall playoffs, and the way the bracket shaped out would all depend on who won. If Shanghai had won this thing instead, then things could have been very different. You really have to give credit where it's due to both Shanghai and London for hanging in there. Although it surely was exhausting for these guys, they managed to entertain us fans for nearly 3 hours. I want to give a big shout out also to Gesture, Prophet, Birdring, Badoshin, Ding, Diem, Youngjin, and Envy for keeping their respective teams in the game thanks to some outstanding performances. I especially want people to recognize Badoshin and Envy as I think their efforts go underappreciated in this match. That's enough about this game though. It's time to move on. It's time for the 5th and final game to make the cut. The last match to discuss in this video is the NYXL versus Vancouver Titans in the winners finals. I think it's safe to say that both of these teams deserve to be at this point in the playoffs. Each of them proved themselves by earning some quality wins against the likes of London, Seoul, Atlanta, and the Gladiators respectively. It was expected that Vancouver would make it this far, I believe, but most people were surprised to see New York here as well. A bunch of people just thought they'd choke again and they didn't expect much from them, but the NYXL came to play. They shattered those low expectations given to them by community members and were once again looking like a true title contender. New York decided to go back to their roots by running their team leader and captain Sabiobi, and the team really seemed to take off as a result. Not only that, but they were giving teams a real hard time with their Bastion comp along with some heroic plays from Meko and the DPS. But Vancouver were no slouches either. They looked rejuvenated thanks to TZ's Orisa, Janu Sigma, and some phenomenal DPS play from Hoxel and Salman Su. So when these two met in the playoffs, it turned out to be something epic. We're talking about a 7-map battle to decide who would be making the grand finals. And unlike the Shanghai-London game, nobody had the clear advantage. Vancouver was superior on the control and escort maps, but New York had their number on hybrid and assault. It was like we went back in time to Runaway versus LW Blue or something. And sadly, it's like nothing changed. Like with LW Blue, the NYXL just couldn't get the job done. They came as close as you can get, but they found themselves not being able to win a big game once again. But my hat does go off to them for coming awfully close. They hung in there right until the very end, proving that the Titans and the Shock were not the only teams that needed to be taken seriously. They gave a loaded Vancouver team a real run for their money. Mecco, Libero, SPB, and the rest of New York just wouldn't say die. They played very hard against their counterparts in Vancouver. This looked like a reformed New York Excelsior. They were keeping their composure in ways that we had only seen during the regular season. I mean, look at what they pulled off on Numbani if we need a good example. Vancouver finished the map with more time left in the bank than them, but they didn't panic. Instead, they finished Numbani for a second time. Keep in mind that this push was in overtime for a majority of their push. New York played flawlessly for an entire round basically. They won every single team fight, but their efforts just weren't good enough. The Titans simply overpowered them thanks to Hoxel and Janu really stepping up their game in the second half of this series. Don't get it twisted though, this was anybody's game until the very end. Vancouver just did more when it mattered the most. Overall though, this was definitely one of the better games we got to witness in 2019. It felt like what a battle between two Korean super teams should. And that's basically everything I have to say regarding this match. So with that said, that is going to wrap up today's content. Those are 5 more of the best matches from Overwatch League Season 2. What were some of your favorite matches from Season 2? Make sure to let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed today's content, then be sure to like and subscribe. And while you're at it, consider checking out part 1 to this through the link in the description or at the end card I have up if you want to watch more. Special thanks goes out to Railroader Cabal, Mburst, and Adam Sinnett for being tier 2 members on the channel. I appreciate your extra support a ton. And as always, thank you all so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.